All right, today we're talking about a king who did something, well, pretty bold. We're getting into the story of Jehoiakim, a king of Judah, whose reign wasn't just some dusty historical footnote. No, it was a huge, dramatic, high-stakes turning point for his entire nation. And he's infamous for one thing above all else. He literally burned a direct message from God.
But look, to really get a handle on his story, you've got to put yourself in his shoes for a second. Just imagine this. You're the leader of a small kingdom, and you are stuck, I mean really stuck, between two massive warring empires. Your survival and the survival of all your people, it all comes down to the choice you make. That was the pressure cooker Jehoiakim was living in every single day.
So let's talk about being a king caught between empires. This was a seriously chaotic time. We're talking the late 7th century BC, and the whole region was basically a powder keg. And guess who was sitting right on top of it? The Kingdom of Judah. And check this out, things changed so fast it would make your head spin. So in 609 BC, his dad, the good King Josiah, is killed in battle against the Egyptians. So what happens? Egypt just waltzes right in, kicks Jehoiakim's brother off the throne, and puts him there instead. He was their guy, a puppet king. But hold on, just 4 years later, bam, the Battle of Carchemish. The new kids on the block, the Babylonians, absolutely wreck the Egyptians. And all of a sudden, Jehoiakim has a brand new boss. And this one was way, way scarier.
Okay, so let's flip the script. What did this all look like from Babylon's point of view? Who even was this guy, this minor king in this tiny territory called Judah?
Well, to them, he was what we call a vassal king. And that's really just a fancy way of saying he wasn't his own boss. He didn't have real independence. First, he was on Egypt's leash. Then, after that big battle, he was on Babylon's leash, answering to the famous King Nebuchadnezzar. His job description was pretty simple. Pay up, stay quiet, and for heaven's sake, don't make waves. And you know what? For a little while, he played the part perfectly. We actually have records from the Babylonians themselves, things like the Babylonian Chronicles that confirm it. Yep, Judah was a subject kingdom, and yep, Jehoiakim paid his dues. So if you just look at it from a purely political angle, he was kind of like a regional manager, just trying to keep the big boss at corporate happy. But that is only one side of the coin. The biblical story, well, that gives us the inside scoop. It's less about his foreign policy and way more about who he was as a person, his character. And let me tell you, this is where things take a really, really dark turn. And here's the kicker. You just can't understand Jehoiakim without understanding his dad, King Josiah. Josiah was a legend, one of Judah's best kings, period. He's the guy who found the lost book of the law and kicked off this massive spiritual revival across the whole country. And his son, Jehoiakim, he did the complete opposite. It's like his mission in life was to tear down everything his father had built. I mean, we are not talking about a few bad decisions here. This was a full-blown rebellion against his own heritage and his own faith. He brought back idol worship that his father had worked so hard to stamp out. He took state money and used it to build himself fancy palaces. He let social injustice run rampant. And all the while, the prophet Jeremiah is practically screaming at him to stop, but he just ignores him. In fact, he went further than ignoring his critics. He hunted them down. So all of this, it all comes to a head in one single, unforgettable moment. An event so dramatic it has defined his legacy for thousands of years. It's an act of defiance that tells you everything you need to know about this king. We're talking about the scroll and the fire. So let's go back to that thought experiment. You're the king. That prophet who has been a thorn in your side for years, he sends you a scroll. And this isn't just his opinion. He claims it's a direct message from God. A message that says your kingdom is going to be completely destroyed and it's all your fault. What do? Seriously, what's your next move? Do you freak out? Do you maybe think about changing your ways? And this was the message. No mincing words. God, speaking through Jeremiah, says, I am bringing upon this place all the disaster that I have pronounced against them. It was a stark, final warning, spelled out in black and white, detailing the coming disaster at the hands of the Babylonians, the very empire he was supposed to be serving. And so this scroll is brought right to him in his cozy winter palace, and it's read out loud. And his response? It's just jaw-droppingly arrogant. As his official is reading the scroll, a few columns at a time, Jehoiakim just takes a little scribe's knife, cuts off the part that was just read, and casually tosses it into the fire pit he's using to keep warm. Can you picture that? He's just sitting there calmly listening to this prophecy of total doom and just slicing it up and burning it piece by piece until the entire warning from God is gone. Just ash. It's the ultimate act of contempt. That one act, burning that scroll, it wasn't just a moment. It was a perfect symbol for his entire reign. He thought if he just destroyed the warnings he didn't want to hear, they couldn't hurt him. He was rebelling against his God, and he was rebelling against his political master, Babylon. And that kind of two-front war, it could only lead to one thing, a legacy of total ruin. And yeah, the consequences came crashing down. His spiritual arrogance was matched only by his political foolishness. He really thought he was untouchable, so he eventually just stopped paying tribute and rebelled against Babylon. And that, right there, was the final straw. Nebuchadnezzar's army showed up and laid siege to Jerusalem. All of this, the nation's collapse, the beginning of the Babylonian exile, you can trace it right back to the choices made by this one king. And what about Jehoiakim himself? Well, the prophet Jeremiah, the very prophet whose words he had turned to ash, delivered a final brutal prediction for the king's own end. No royal funeral, no honored tomb. Jeremiah prophesied that he would get the burial of an ass, just dragged out of the city gates and dumped. For a king, that is the ultimate disgrace. It just underscores how completely and totally he fell. So we're left with this question, aren't we? Jehoiakim's story happened thousands of years ago, but the core issue feels incredibly modern. He had warnings coming from every direction, the political reality from Babylon, the spiritual truth from the prophets, and he plugged his ears and refused to listen to any of it. It really makes you think, what is the true cost, not just for the leader, but for everyone they lead, when they decide the truth is something to be cut up and thrown in the fire?